Today, we're going to talk and discuss about the language change, improvements, or setback. This video is a part of the final project of Introductions to the Study of Language course at Sampurna University. And I will not be alone today. My two other friends will be joining on discussing this particular matter. They are Elena and Kalista. So considering the language improvements or setback, we have seen in the works of literature that language has always been diverse and changing. Maybe you can try by checking your earliest novel or poem that you have read or just bought, and you put it there. Maybe they have been sitting there for a while now in your bookshelf, and try to compare it with the old classical novel. And you will finally notice that language has changed dramatically ever since. Moreover, if any of you has ever tackled the Shakespeare writings, you know well how. And if we see nowadays and we reflect to the reality of today's language phenomenon, the language change tends to occur in various ways. And lately, I've been watching the Netflix series, and it's called Crown. Maybe you probably have heard of it. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I guess I just fell in love with how these characters, or maybe the people who lived in old days, truly expressed themselves and in such meaningful and beautiful way, even when they come to an argument. For example, like this clip.
They know that you betray your wife and make no attempt to hide it. They know that thanks to you, she has psychological problems and eats or doesn't eat, or whatever it is she does or doesn't do. They know that you are a spoilt, immature man, endlessly complaining unnecessarily. Married to a spoilt, immature woman, endlessly complaining unnecessarily. And we are all heartily sick of it. All anyone wants is for the pair of you to pull yourselves together. Stop making spectacles of yourselves.
So how was it? Did you notice the change? Or maybe did you pay attention to the queen that she literally says the word unnecessarily a few times? And I think that is so unique and also so different with the things that we see in today's era. Because I think that people who live in old days, they really pay attention to this ethical language, and also the tone rise and down, and that's what makes them unique, the language. And however, if I see the change in today's era, people tend to transform the language into the simple one, and especially for the young people, the word unnecessarily can be changed into no need. So that's simple and also not too difficult to pronounce, because people nowadays, they really try to look up to the new words that is simple and also meaningful, of course. And in fact, the language does not change simply over time, but there are other aspects that comes into play, such as technology, cultures, massive migrations, and even the people who try to use the old words to acquire new meanings. So with that being said, the rates of social phenomenon comes into play, at which creates a new meaning and language forms.
The language keeps on changing and evolving. If it had never changed, we will never have the words that can be used to refer to such things as cable TV and fax machines. However, why does it have to change? Why not just use the old forms on the old days? Interesting question. It is important to realize that just because the language is changing, it doesn't mean that it is becoming worse. It is just getting better and more adaptive to our current situation, each and every day. There are so many factors behind why a language has to change. The common one is because the needs of the learners, or as the speakers, also keeps on changing. The improvement and the development that this word requires us, as the speakers, to find the words that can express our intention in more clear and efficient way. For example, I used to talk to my friend in a very long and clear form, such as, I will text you tonight. But today, I can use a more simple form which already express my intention, such as, I'll text you later. Secondly, this can also be caused by the same language experience that we have with someone or a group. As a person, we tend to find new words or phrases from people in order to mix or combine it as a way to mark our identity in a group to differ who is and who is not in that group. For example, if you have ever seen a group in your school that talks in a very strange and unfamiliar word, then perhaps you have already seen the example in this real life situation.
And now for the closing, why language change is important and quite often ineffable. Just like change in society and how people change along with technology and things like that, newcomers, new variety of cultures, and evolving things in general. Language can and always will change depending on the society and depending on the speakers. As mentioned before, language change is also based on convenience. Speakers tend to change some aspects of what's more convenient for them, or to say or do. For example, on a daily basis, people will use new slangs or new terms for everything, or in quite different age, we can see that from parents and then to their child, the language would also be different. The way they talk, the way they write, possibly, and it's basically from what we see, it's basically marking the change of society. Aside of language changing, just as a mark of change in society, and as a mark of society going through and developing. It can also be considered a setback or an improvement depending on who sees what. For example, when people on a daily basis talk, they prefer to use several slangs, and when they see a new one, they think, oh, this one is cooler than the other one. Let's try using this. And therefore, there are many changes. This also applies to phrases and maybe even new words and new figure of speech. It depends on them. For example, when someone who values literacy or values grammar, things like that, they could possibly see it as a setback, because as time goes, people just use language that doesn't exactly suit a quote-unquote proper, or quite possibly it can also be said that it doesn't fit certain aesthetics for like maybe few stories, novels, etc., because it's a spoken thing. But it also often happens, or change in writings. Like in novels, there are some novels who use modern slangs or stuff like that to explain instead of fully formal things, and that can also be a good and bad thing, because on the other hand, people understand it better and easier. It's hard. And on the other hand, also, when sarcasm is written, for example, not everyone can pick it up and think of it, oh, this is sarcasm. For some people, it may take a while for them to think that it's sarcasm. So yeah, that's it for the closing. So in conclusion, is that language change is important and quite technically ineffable. And in general, it just marks the change of society and humans.